Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and here's another build for you with the Scavenger curved swords. Now, I wanted to see how well they turn out with Bleed and Frost. I had done Bleed and Frost on the twin blades before, but I hadn't done it for the Scavenger curved swords, and since I ended up liking them a lot, I figured I'd do a Bleed Frost build with them and try to maximize damage and come up with a good build at 150. Now, if you're simply going for procs, the twin blades technically will proc faster since they have more bleed or around the same and hit 6 times on the jump attacks. However, the Scavenger curved sword has more pure damage, and when procking builds up and becomes more resisted throughout the fight, you'll be able to get more regular damage in between procs and eventually do thousands per jump attacks in between and still procking Frost and Bleed. And then obviously you get the bonuses from all the talismans and consecutive attack bonuses that we're using and whatnot. This is New Game Plus 7 and it still absolutely shreds bosses. If you want to go with Frost and Bleed, you're going to see this throughout the video. It is absolutely fantastic. And I really like the Scavenger curved swords. I really liked how much damage they're able to do. The innate bleed on them is really cool. And then being able to put Frost on the offhand one is really helpful. Now for the offhand one, we're using Chilling Mist. That way we can get Frost without having to scale with intelligence. And on the right hand one, obviously we're using Seppuku to maximize bleed and the damage that we can do. I'm going to show exactly how to buff this and how to use the offhand one if you don't know how to do that as well, so that you can maximize your damage at 150, basically so that you can do a ton of damage, build up Frost and Bleed, and have a really awesome universal build that can do both procs and take chunks of damage away from enemies' HP, because sometimes you're going to get Bleed and Frost at the same time, and it really does take off a ridiculous amount of damage. It's truly very, very powerful, and particularly on the Scavenger curved swords because they have such high damage to begin with. And being able to use Chilling Mist is a really big bonus because we really don't need a lot of intelligence for this build, no pun intended there. But yeah, having the no scaling there as far as that goes, because it just gives you that additional Frost for 40 seconds when you utilize it. And then obviously we're going with high arcane, and then we're going to invest in arcane mainly because we're using the Scavenger curved sword in the right hand on occult. Now, don't mind me here getting followed by pretty much every enemy in the entire village that's here, but the Godskin Apostle, as you're going to see, gets absolutely shredded in short order by it. And the reason is because of that dual proc, and the fact that you're able to do both really gives you a lot of power and versatility in the build. And this is mainly a recommendation for PvE. I know Bleed and Frost and Bleed obviously has a lot in PvP in the meta, but for PvE, if you're trying to make the game a little easier, or if you're like me and you ended up really liking the Scavenger curved swords, even if you're not a fan of Bleed builds for their damage alone, this is a fantastic way to change it up and to do a lot of damage and work on proccing stuff while also getting thousands of damage per jump attack. Be warned though that your best buildup on the Frost is when Chilling Mist is active, which is only about 40 seconds, so you're probably only going to have about 30 something seconds by the time you use it. So as you can tell with the Godskin Apostle there, I don't think I was able to proc it in that instance. He still got shredded anyway, but for the most part, you're going to make the best out of when Chilling Mist is active and has that additional Frost on it from the Ash of War, which is going to give you a lot of buildup. So this character's on around, I think, Journey 13 at this point. I did some main bosses, some field bosses to test this out. I had a lot of people asking me about Bleed Frost on these, so I decided to do a video for it. Just wanted to mention though, for Elden Beast and Radagon though, I would still go with 2 occult Scavenger curved swords for the high damage in between. Now, you can get Frost damage on Radagon, but Elden Beast is immune anyway, and he gets shredded on occult, especially if you have 60 or 80 arcane, and it's just easier. I mean, if you do want to go with the one having magic damage and Frost on it, if not though, 2 occults can absolutely shred Radagon and Elden Beast in no time. It's really effective against him. I did it in my last video with the Scavenger curved swords. It works very well on occult for pure damage and building up the consecutive attack stuff. While some bosses can undoubtedly give you a hard time with any build, if you are able to land the jump attacks consistently and you get used to them, the amount of damage and then the procs are going to do a lot. It's really going to be something that can carry you through most of the game. By the way, if you do need another one for your offhand, you only have one Scavenger curved sword, go with the Bandit curved sword. It's a great alternative to it. I have a Bleed build for that on my channel that was requested by a lot of people because a lot of people love it because it's more accessible. Because the Scavenger curved sword is a little hard to get. It's only 1 per playthrough. You get it in Mount Gelmar. It's a little bit out of the way. You can always use the Bandit curved sword. You don't get the innate bleed, but it's a great alternative that's a lot more accessible. And then for enemies that don't bleed and do frost, you can still do a ridiculous amount of damage. You're going to see that with the tree avatar here. Yes, it's one of the easier ones, but it's on the max scaling of the game, so he does have a little bit more HP. And he still takes a ton of damage while also getting the frost proc. You can absolutely shred him, especially larger targets who are going to get hit with everything from the jump attack. So in certain circumstances, you don't even have to worry about the bleed. Just get the frost and the pure damage if they're immune. And if they're immune to everything, as I mentioned before, go with a Colt on both and you will shred everything in the game. And if you want to practice this build, it's always good to practice stuff on field bosses and unsuspecting enemies and such, because you're just able to have a lot more freedom in your attacks. And as you can tell here, absolutely shredding sometimes without them even being able to do anything back. But yeah, field bosses are fantastic to test stuff on. When I'm testing a lot of builds, field bosses are usually the first things that I go to. I usually don't go to main bosses unless I think I have something down. If I'm using something where I'm not sure, or I'm just trying to figure out a build or stats for whatever it is, field bosses are fantastic to just basically go out into the field and see how your build is doing. If you want to know how I create builds, it's mostly out in the field. Really, there is so much you can do out there to test stuff. Caelid is a perfect example of that too, because you have some harder bosses that are thrown in out there that you can kind of test the builds on. It doesn't really matter if you get killed a couple times trying different things until it works or you find the stats that fit you. Using field bosses are perfect way. They really are a perfect way to test whatever build you have and see if you can shred for a lot of damage. And you can even test buffing stuff and whatnot with field bosses. That's going to help you a lot. And as you can see, it absolutely obliterated this dragon. He's pretty much weak to everything. But yeah, go out in the field definitely helps. So for this awesome setup, we have two Scavenger curved swords, one with Chilling Mist, one with Seppuku. Any seal will do. We have the white mask and the Raptor's black feathers, Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, Lord of Blood's Exultation, Millicent's Prosthesis, Claw Talisman, and then the consecutive attack tier as well. Now, for the stats at 150, I heavily invested into Arcane at 60, but the other thing I did was I put a little bit into Intelligence just to see if I can get some damage out of it and a little bit more Frost. You don't really have to do that, though. You can go with like 10 Intelligence if you want. I think I threw a little bit of extra Dex in there as well because you only need 14, but all in all, it ended up working out. These stats ended up working fantastic at 150. I had 50 Vigor as well, which was plenty for me. Even on the max scaling at this point, the stats worked quite well. For buffing this, I used Golden Vow, Flame Grant Me Strength. I think that's pretty much it. And then the tier as well, the consecutive attack tier, obviously you can drink, that's 3 minutes, so that would be the first thing you would do. And then Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. Then I'm on Xbox, so it's Y and LB to get Chilling Mist active, Y and RB back for Seppuku, and then the jump attacks, obviously, for extreme damage. Now, if you want to be really risky and you're just continuously leveling up, for 5% more damage, you can use Howl, or for 10% more, you can use Blood Boil Aromatic. I've had a lot of people ask me about Blood Boil Aromatic. The reason I avoid it is because I'm on console. Arteria leaves, or however you say it, they're very difficult to farm for. I don't duplicate or anything like that, and I am on console, so they're annoying to get. I know for a lot of people they're difficult to get, so I generally go with either Howl or Flame Grant Me Strength. Howl, though, in all honesty, is only 5% less, and they both cause you, I think, to take additional damage anyway. So there's not a big trade-off there between the two. Flame Grant Me Strength, though, being 10% less, but you don't lose any of your defenses with it. By the way, as you can see there, it does great for mobs and absolutely shreds them too. So there it is. If you want a Bleed Frost setup, this is an excellent way to do this with the Scavenger Curved Swords, with Chilling Mist and Seppuku, with your jump attacks, Raptor's Black Feathers, and the Claw Talisman. If you're not subbed, definitely sub to this channel. This channel continues to grow. I keep doing builds pretty much all the time lately. Probably been doing anywhere from 3 to 5 a week. It's been pretty awesome. The channel's been growing like crazy lately, so definitely hit that subscribe button. Ton of awesome PvE builds on my channel, so be sure to check those out. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll catch you guys there.